There we go. So here we've got the paper pattern for the quarter circle skirt, and as we were saying, it's cut in one piece.
One piece, so you can see that this, when it goes on the body, you have a little centre front there, and you can see that it scoots around the back, and then our centre back seam, this one has 2 centimetres for just a regular zip in there, as opposed to an invisible zip. And what also happens with this too is that it can be a little bit tricky sometimes too with the grain lines, because this grain line would be in line with the selvage, and this grain line would be across the fabric. So sometimes there can be a little bit of tension between the two of those. And it also means too that if it's cut like this on the fabric, with the selvages going down here, that the centre front goes onto the bias. So depending on your fabric, in this calico it's quite stiff, so it's not really dropping, but in a softer fabric, sometimes the front can drop, and you'd have to level that back up again.
And the pattern that I've always had for quarter circle skirts accounts for that in different fabrics. So we would have several patterns for a quarter circle skirt, one in a very soft fabric, one in a rigid fabric.
Yep.
And where it was in a very soft fabric, we would actually lengthen the back seam a bit.
Oh, okay.
So that because once you put the zip into the back seam, it tends to pull up anyway.
Sure.
And the back seam also tends to pull up over your bottom a little bit. So we would always add to that length and then grade it off towards the centre front.
So what Lydia's saying is adding a little bit of length here at the centre back, and then taking it so it might go back to its original length in the front, and then go back out to more length in the back again here.
So it looks quite odd on the paper pattern, but it worked in the fabric.
So then you would have different blocks or different
quarter circle patterns.
Patterns depending on the fabrication that you were using.
Yeah.
And so it's something that's like really easy. It'd be a really easy skirt if that was what your customer liked, that it'd be easy to just be able to repeat that in different fabrics or different types of the same fabric each season.
It makes a good vehicle for complicated fabric. It does really great things with stripes or checks, and it's a good simple.
That's a good point. So if you did have a striped fabric, the stripes would go down here.
That's right. So on one side of the centre back, they'd be horizontal.
So on here they might be going.
And on the other side, they'd be vertical.
Yep.
So it looks quite good. It can look really good if you do it the right way.
Cool. Okay, so this one here is a half circle skirt, and you can see that it's got much more wings there. Our half circle pattern is like this, literally half a circle. And you can see that goes on the dummy and goes down like this.
Yeah, so the half circle skirt is definitely flared and definitely stands away from the hips and away from the hem quite a lot.
The good thing about doing a half circle as well is that we were just talking about stripes. If you had a striped fabric here, the stripes would follow the centre back, and then they would go across on the front.
Yep.
So it's actually quite nice because these lines are going across.
But they sort of go around, don't they?
Yeah.
They sort of make a bell.
Exactly. So as they go towards the side seam, it looks like the stripes are going down, and then by the time you get around to the back, they've actually gone and they're straight at the centre back. So it's probably actually quite a flattering way of using horizontal stripes on the front of the garment. So you get a bit of width here, but then you also get the longer lines through the back of the garment.
And so of course we're talking about skirts here, but really we're just talking about quarter circles, half circles, and later on full circles, which can be used on sleeves. They can be used as a dress. They can be used as tiers on a garment. They're really very versatile shapes to use when you're pattern making, and they're very simple to construct.
Exactly, because all we're working with here is this length here, so the length of it, which is our waist length, and then the length of the skirt, however much you want that. And another nice thing you can do too for lots of evening wear is that the front of the skirt might be this length, but then if you just take it down and add length onto the back, you can easily turn a garment that's sort of quite short in the front, and then has a longer, train at the back of the garment as well.
Enormously used in bridal wear.
Exactly.
And hideously used in the last 5 years of fast fashion.
Yes, it's probably in some variation would be called a mullet skirt, although I don't think a mullet skirt would use quite this much fabric.
No, they're just randomly cut down at the back without any thought
they'd be
about.
much stingier in their fabric use. So, and you can see there again, like half scale, so double the stiffness of this calico.
Yep.
So if you wanted it to stand out like this in full scale, you would have to have some sort of support underneath.
It's a very preppy sort of shape, a half circle skirt like that. It always looks like 1950s college girls
it's
to me.
Very, very Grease.
Yeah, very Grease. So Grease. Yeah. And now moving on from Grease to more Elizabeth Taylor.
I was going to say Charles James, but I think Elizabeth Taylor. Yeah, exactly.
We have a full circle skirt.
We have a full circle, and you can see we pull that up. You can really see that that's a half circle there, and then the same.
Yeah.
Half circle at the back.
Beautiful.
And our pattern is literally, like a donut.
It's a donut.
Shape.
Yep.
So a full circle there, and again, it's still just based on the waist measurement.
Yes, all you need is a little bit of a formula, isn't it? The geometry of a circle is all we need to be able to create this.
And then you just need to be quite specific in the length, because there are so many. You have to keep it nice and even around. But it would also depend on the fabrication that you were using. Like maybe in a Duchess satin or something, you might not need to make any variation in the hem to take the dropping of the fabric into account, or the grain of the fabric.
So for example, in the calico one that we've got there, the hem has stayed pretty even. But then if we have a look at this Georgette one, which was again cut from exactly the same pattern, it's pretty. I can't actually. Sorry, I've got your arm on the way. Yep.
So half scale.
Still, it's the exact same pattern, isn't it? We've cut it from the same pattern, but when you let it drop, you can see. Can you see how the centre back is sticking up higher? It's shorter. There we are. You can see it underneath there, and then away from the centre back, you can see the hem dropping down. So normally, what someone would do in a couture house, or if they were making a one-off special, and then it's shorter again at the side seams and then dropping again the side front. So what you would normally do for a skirt like that, what we used to do was put metal pegs onto the skirt at various intervals around the hem and leave it to drop for 2 days, and then we would come back and put it onto the table and hand shorten it.
And you can see
go on.
This sample's been made for a couple of years now, and even though it's really quite a short distance, or a short length, you can see how much over time it really has made a difference between where it's on the straighter grain and where it goes onto the bias.
It's
here.
like about 1.5 centimetres, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly, which is quite a lot. That would be
huge amount on a tiny little thing
3
like that.
centimetres for a knee-length skirt in full scale. There's also another option. What I've done in the past too, apart from like Lydia was saying about actually helping the bias drop by putting pegs on there. Something that I've done in the past is actually put it to level the hem. Is that I've put a mark like on a table leg or something.
Yep.
And then I've got the full scale dummy sitting next to that table leg, and you just move the dummy around slowly, and at each point where where it touches the leg, you can just put a pin in there at the level that you've marked on the table leg, and then that'll give you a line of pins that are an exact measurement from the ground up to that point.
Go on, sorry.
Oh, and I was going to say when you've got the pins in there, then you can take it off the dummy, you can lay it out flat on the table, and you just have to follow the line of pins, adding on the seam allowance. And what you would possibly do in production as well is once you've cut that amount off, you would put the skirt back onto the original pattern piece, and you could alter the length of the garment. It's probably what you would do each time. It's going to be slightly different depending on the variations in the grain in the fabric. So it's not going to work in every instance, But it will certainly help so that the skirt doesn't look quite as wobbly around the hem as this
Yeah,
one does.
so true. And the other thing you can do is use one of the old tailor stands, which is a ruler on a stand, and you put the stand next to the. Oops, you'll have to do it.
So they have a stand that has a little thing that slides up and down, so you can get the length. You might have seen in the 1950s when Dior talks about skirt lengths, it's always like 12 inches from the floor up to the bottom of the skirt or something. So you set that length, and then on some of them you just go around with pins, and in other ones you actually have a chalk dust inside. So you have a little puffer, and you puff, and it blows a little dot of or a little line of chalk around the hem that you can then use as a guideline, other than as opposed to putting pins around there.
We're talking in a fantasy world now, though. Nobody really does that anymore.
No.
But maybe they will again one day. Who knows?